Hello everybody. Now I will start this module 1 of finite element modeling of welding processes. We can start the module 1. The content of the module 1 is that first is the introduction to welding processes and it having the different components. Introduction, first we will try to introduce basically the associated with the welding processes, different welding processes and maybe materials and the different properties of the which may be required for the development of the numerical model. So, that we will try to discuss. And next in the classification, and that means what we can classify the fusion welding processes, then what are the different fusion welding processes, how the brazing and soldering are different from the welding processes. Apart from that, solid state welding processes we will discuss, and then advanced welding processes, the advancements in the welding processes also we will try to discuss, and then finally wire additive manufacturing processes. So basically in this module we will try to look into the basics of the different welding processes, and of course we analyze the welding processes in the perspective of the physics behind this welding process or physical mechanisms we will try to understand associated with the welding processes, but it is not intended to look into the complete description of the welding process, their advantage, not like that. We will try to understand the welding processes in the light of the physical mechanism involved in a particular welding process, such that it will be easier for us if we understand this physical mechanism, then we will be able to develop some kind of the model. So, using the tool finite element method. So, that is the objective of this module 1. Now, start with the very basic things, that material processing technology. So, in general we can say that this material processing technology, we can generate the raw materials first, and from the raw materials basically the engineer will try to produce from raw materials to the some finished good or some product which we can directly use this product we can use, but there are several steps involved through conversion from the raw materials to the final product. So, then that is associated with the different kind of the manufacturing processes. For it may be involved some casting, machining, welding, joining, heat treatment, so many processes may be involved in between. So, that is in general we can say that it is a material processing technologies. Now, industrial processes means it is the industrial scaling of all these manufacturing processes, but they aims to produce in the larger scale. That means it is associated with the various chemical, mechanical processes, and but try to produce as a large quantity in a batch production. So, that is why that follow the industrial processes. Of course, industrial processes definitely it is also included all of the manufacturing processes. Then raw materials is basically we understand the raw materials is normally produced either extracted from the minerals or it can be produced from the basic chemicals or natural substances. So, there are several procedures to extract from the ore to getting the raw materials, and that raw materials after that we process it, that is following through a series of the manufacturing processes, and then it reaches to the final product. But apart from these things, all this series of the manufacturing processes we discuss, there are several manufacturing processes involved in this conversion from raw material to the finished product. It is also associated some additional processes, for example smelting and alloying, but sometimes it is necessary to characterize or to get some specific properties of this particular material or metals. The alloying of the metals is also required, and sometimes we can produce the composite materials also for that purpose to achieve some specific properties which may be required for a particular application. But sometimes what we do, alloying are used to produce the metal that to be fabricated into parts, but finally has to be assembled, and then after assemble we can get the particular product. So, that means it means that some alloying of the metals is also possible, such that it can achieve particular properties and which is maybe aimed to a particular application. So, this is the overall we can say that there are several material processing technologies are also involved. Now, before understanding the processes, any manufacturing process, we should know that what are the common materials and alloy system is normally used. From that perspective, here I am presenting some common alloy, engineering alloy, and most of the cases there is a huge application of all these particular alloy or metals. So, in that case it comes first that ferrous metals, it is a simply iron as a main constituent, that is that we say it is a ferrous metals. After the non-ferrous metals also there, other than iron as a main constituent, there are several non-ferrous metals. We can see that alloy, aluminum alloy, nickel, titanium alloy, all are non-ferrous metals, and they are having the different applications. So, we use all these particular metals and alloys, and simply we are dealing in the manufacturing industry also, most of the cases we dealing with these things, this particular metals and alloy. But this is not enough, maybe other kind of metals and alloy may are also used in these things, but I am trying to get some overall view on this, what kind of metals normally used in the manufacturing industry. So, steel can huge application of the steel's components are also there in the manufacturing industry, and normally the steel we can define carbon is having less than 2%, then we can categorize this steel, and carbon having more than 2%, we say it is a simply cast iron. Both are having their use in industry. Then copper alloy is the, there are so many applications of the copper alloy, but which is come into in our mind that pure copper is the very electrical industry mostly use the copper and copper alloy. Then aluminum alloy mostly used in the automotive industry, main application, but definitely is having some other applications also, but mostly we use in this automotive frame or automotive applications. The nickel based alloy is outstanding strength and corrosion resistance is the main properties of nickel based alloy, but there is a huge application of nickel based alloy in several applications we see. Similarly, titanium alloy also, titanium alloy is having very good strength to weight ratio, and of course it is normally designed the high temperature engineering materials we considered in that way, and there is a huge application of titanium alloy. One of is that even aerospace industry as well as the medical industry we can use the titanium alloy. Apart from that, there is a super alloy also. Super alloy having the specific property, then high strength, creep resistance, oxidation properties. We will look into that, what are the different properties normally used to evaluate the materials before use of this particular material for a particular application. Now, corrosion resistant, fatigue resistant, all combination of all this kind of properties is having a combination of good properties, that is normally design the super alloy system. The super alloy system can be nickel based super alloy, base metal is nickel and other alloying elements are there, so that it is possible to achieve particular properties and in a particular application. Similarly, iron based, cobalt based super alloy also possible or have been developed, but main application we can find in our mind that super alloy can be used jet engine, rocket and nuclear applications, very huge applications. So, that is why there are just so many engineering materials are available, and but they are having the different applications and for the particular purpose or different purposes. Now, these are the just overall view of the different kind of metals we normally use. Now, if we look into that properties of this, now once we use particular material, then we should have some knowledge about the properties of this particular material, and what are the different properties normally evaluate to analysis for a particular manufacturing process. That is also necessary, because to adopt a particular manufacturing process we need to know the particular specific properties of a particular material. Now, what are the physical properties? We can see that I have listed few of them, the different kind of the properties. One is the thermal conductivity. It is a simply property of a material to conduct the heat flow. That is the one property, thermal conductivity. It is very important property, and because this important property characterizes the different weld behavior in specific to welding properties. So, definitely thermal conductivity of a particular material is very significant or important parameter. For example, high thermal conductivity material, copper, aluminum, silver, gold, these are the mainly the high thermal conductivity material. Other low conductivity material having the low thermal conductance, that is polymer, alumina, they are having the low thermal conduction. So, I want to mention here that material having the high thermal conductivity and material having the low thermal conductivity. So, in these two cases the application of the welding technology can be different, since their properties are completely different. So, it is necessary to analyze or to have some knowledge about the different kind of the properties, normal common properties of the particular material. Then thermal expansion is the another kind of properties, because it actually decide there is a mismatch, plastic deformation may happen after welding process. So, in that case it is also necessary to understand what is thermal expansion or that related property, coefficients of thermal expansion is necessary to explain the different kind of the thermal strain or residual stress strain associated with the welding process. Better to explain all this phenomena. Now, thermal expansion, we say change in volume responds to the change in temperature associated with the change temperature, and this change may happen in a very localized area. It creates the thermal strain in a solid. Definitely there is a change with the application of the temperature or presence of the temperature gradient, then definitely it creates some kind of the thermal strain in a solid. Now, degree of expansion per unit change in temperature is simply defined the material's properties. These properties we normally measure, that is the coefficients of thermal expansion that we measure. But even the coefficients of thermal expansion can also vary with respect to temperature. That means at different temperature the coefficients of thermal expansion may also differ. So, should have some knowledge about the coefficient of thermal expansion value in this perspective. Now, if we look into the mechanical properties of a particular material, that we define these different material properties, or we can evaluate with these different material properties. One is the strain, the change in dimension per unit original dimension. So, with the application of the mechanical load or with the application of the thermal load in a structure, what is the change in dimension per unit with respect to the original dimension, that indicates the strain. Similarly, stress can be defined applied force per unit area, and stress can be more normal stress as well as the shear stress. So, normal stress can be defined in such a way that application the load is applied which is perpendicular to the surface of a particular material. In that cases the stress is defined as the normal stress, and shear stress means applied load is parallel to the surface of this particular material. So, in that case this is also defined the stress load divided by area, but in this case the area can be defined that load and area are parallel with respect to each other. So, this way we can differentiate what is normal stress and what is shear stress value. So, that knowledge is required maybe to understand the different modeling approaches. Then elasticity can be defined, we know the elasticity means if we apply the load particular component and after removal of the load it will come back to the initial position. So, that property is called mainly defined as elasticity. But why elasticity is important? Because elasticity can be defined such that it helps to define what is the yield stress. That means if you cross that value, over that value the material deforms, there is a permanent deformation we can observe in a particular component. So, that is why property of the elasticity is defined in that way. Then plasticity, simply we understand that if there is a permanent deformation with the application, and then plastic deformation will happen in the structure if it cross the elastic limit, then only plastic deformation we can observe. Then toughness is the property of the material to resist fracture due to the high impact. That property is associated with the, if there is impact load is there, then how much energy is absorbed before fracture, that is the measure of the toughness. So, that toughness property is also necessary to define in a particular material to understand that how material behaves with the application of the dynamic load or maybe impact load. Then resilience is the what is the amount of the energy when deformed elastically and released upon the unloading. So, when elastically deform the material, then when you release the load, then it will release the some amount of the energy. So, that energy is the measure of the resilience, but of course, the deformation should not cross the elastic limit, it should be below the elastic limit. That means resilience is associated with the amount of the energy elastically, not the plastically. Similarly, another important parameter is the creep properties. So, creep properties is another important parameters when the material is having some application and the high temperature application. So, at high temperature, at the same time it is associated some amount of the constant load, then creep properties is important. What we can define, the material is subjected to a constant load stress at elevated temperature for a long period of time. That means it creates some slow and permanent deformation in a structure. So, that indicates the creep properties. So, creep properties is properties at elevated temperature subjected to constant load. Normally, in that way we can define the creep properties. Now, tensile specimen elongate continuously until rupture occurs, even the application of the stress below the yield point. So, it is like that only. Suppose one sample is in room temperature and then you apply, there is application of the load. So, metal will deform plastically once it crosses the elastic limit, but creep is different because creep, even it is not reaching the yield point, then permanent deformation may happens in this structure, and this is the, but this creep properties we define, or that means this permanent deformation at constant load is there below the, even it is below the yield point, that may happen at the high elevated temperature. So, that is why it is a normal temperature, at the room temperature creep properties may not significant, but material is having application at the high temperature, then creep properties is important or creep property is significant. So, in that case we can analyze the creep properties. For example, gas turbine, power plant, high temperature pressure vessel, when you apply, we choose particular material in this particular application, then definitely it is important to know what is the creep properties of this particular material. Similarly, fatigue also other properties, when metal is subjected to some kind of the cyclic loading conditions, in that cases the failure may happen even it is the yield point of a particular material. Why it is like that? Because yield point we normally measure as a simple tensile testing machine. So, simple uniaxial tensile testing machine we measure the yield point for a particular material. Now, once the load condition, because in tensile testing machine there is a, we put the continuous load and the rate may be very slow. So, that means almost steady state it reaching. So, in that condition we measure the yield stress. Now, when the load condition changes, it is not necessary the material will behave same as what we got in the simple tensile testing normally done at room temperature value. So, that is why fatigue also we can define this one property is a kind of properties when there is a application of the cyclic load in a on this material. So, it may fail below the yield point stress. So, basically in that cases the endurance limit we normally evaluate in a during a cyclic loading of a structure. Also the hardness properties also define the resistance to the scratching or resistance to the wear. Based on that we can measure the hardness of a particular material. So, all these mechanical properties is also important, and sometimes it is necessary to define early beforehand if you try to develop particular model. So, these values of all these material properties may be important, and sometimes all this kind of mechanical or other physical properties as a function of temperature is also required when you try to develop the model of the welding process. So, that is why we discuss all this different kind of the properties of the materials, and of course our discussion is mainly focused on the, I just forgot to mention that it is focused only on the metallic materials. So, we will not focus on the what is happening, all this modeling approaches is particular to the polymeric or plastic material. Now, what way we can evaluate all this? So, we understand that there are several properties are there which is associated with the material, and it can be thermal properties, it can be mechanical properties and maybe other properties, but what we can evaluate these properties, how you can measure all these properties. For example, physical properties, there are standard experimental methodologies are there, and that we can get any reference, we will get what are the different standard methodologies to measure the different physical properties. So, that is not in the scope of analysis for this in this process in this module. Now, we can look into the microstructural measurement can be done, that in this sense the average grain size and distribution, we can use the line intercept method can be used to understand the average grain size and distribution. Apart from that, residual stress we normally use the XRD method, X-ray diffraction method, commonly Newton diffraction method can also be used, or other mechanical methods can also be used to measure the residual stress also. Then chemical composition of the metallic material normally use the energy EDX analysis, and even various phases in a particular component, some XRD method can also be used. So, here apart from that other physical properties, for example, universal testing machine, what we can measure the hardness properties, this is well set and well understood available. Apart from that we can, there are several other methodologies what we can ever the different we can characterize the microstructure, their phases in a particular component or samples which is processed by following some kind of the manufacturing process, and here it is a specific to the welding process. Other properties also in associated with the modeling approaches, for example, latent heat of material. So, it is associated with the phase change from liquid phase to solid phase, or vice versa, also from solid phase to liquid phase, the latent heat of solidification, both are important, that can also be measured. Then apart from that, thermal diffusivity is the one significant parameter which is often used in the heat transfer analysis. Then viscosity, if we want to look into that the fluid flow analysis, then viscosity property is necessary. Then electrical conductivity and resistivity, in this case this electrical conductivity or resistivities may be useful when you try to look into the modeling approach in case of the resistant spot welding processes, there it will be this property is useful there, and what we can generate the heat, that we can relate just looking into the electrical resistivity property. Similarly, magnetic properties is maybe significant if you try to analyze the induction welding process. So, all these properties having maybe specific properties is maybe significant associated with particular welding process. Apart from that, in machining, welding and casting in general, we can say that thermal properties of the work is important parameter, is very important in machining, welding and casting. If you look into the casting and the welding process, there is a material flow is there and solidification is also there. So, once the material flow is there, basically you have some idea about the what are the fluid properties is associated in the flow of the material associated with the casting and the welding processes. Apart from that, semiconductor manufacturing, there it is also necessary the electrical properties of the silicon is important parameter. There the electrical properties is important in this particular manufacturing process. Apart from this, for example, mass diffusion coefficient, this particular property is important in case of the surface hardening, or when you try to analyze the diffusion welding process, we have some idea what is the mass diffusion coefficient associated with this welding processes. So, we can see that when you try to analyze the different welding processes, and then it always associated some kind of the physical properties of these things, and that physical properties in some point of time is possible to measure using some standard methodology or standard experimental techniques are there, and by following that things we can measure the physical properties of this particular welding process or other kind of the manufacturing processes. Now, once you understand the different properties, all these things, which properties is important at what type of the welding processes or what kind of the analysis. Now, it is also important to understand that what are the different physics based modeling approach, because here the course structure we say finite element modeling of the welding processes, but to understand the welding processes, when you try to develop the finite elements welding processes, we need to understand what are the physical mechanism or physics in a welding process is involved. So, to understand that, now we will try to discuss the different perspective in the sense that what are the different physics based modeling approaches normally we follow, and overall in this modeling approaches that will helps to understand to get overall view of the different modeling approaches, or definitely physics based modeling approaches, and then will be easy to apply in kind of in specific to the welding processes. Now, what we represent the general format to represent the physical system. We normally represent the physical system assuming that some equilibrium system exists. When we assuming the equilibrium system, then from there it is associated with some kind of the governing equations along with the boundary conditions are also there. Now, even it is not equilibrium system, if it is the dynamic system also, then also it is possible to represent the dynamic system in the form of a governing equation. Of course, in these cases we analyze the kinematics for this particular process, and it also form the governing equations. Now, once we represent the system assuming it is either in the form of equilibrium system or either in the form of a dynamic systems, all we try to represent the in the form of a governing equations. Now, finite element is the tool. Once we represent the governing equation, so tool will help to solve this particular governing equation by using the specific boundary conditions, and that boundary conditions may different from the different processes. For example, the heat transfer analysis may be associated both in welding processes, and heat transfer analysis may associated with the machining process or casting processes. So, all these processes will be solving the same heat conduction equation, but since processes are different, their boundary condition can be different, and finally we will be getting the temperature distribution. So, that is why we can develop in particular system, then we define the governing equations, then we try to find out the what way we can solve this governing equation, such that we will be able to solution of this equation in the form of a some intended variable. So, in case of heat transfer analysis we will be getting the temperature distribution, in case of fluid flow analysis we will be getting the velocity distribution, in case of stress analysis or thermomechanical model we will be able to get the temperature as well as the displacement field, both we will be getting from a coupled thermomechanical analysis. So, but all these cases you have to develop either in the form of a governing equation, and some cases it is also necessary to develop some kind of the constitutive relation. We will come in that point also. So, some system we represents the in the form of a constitutive equation, along with the some cases we need it in a we try to represent this thing, there are some variables maybe they relate following some constitutive relations. Apart from that, definitely we already mentioned that some essential or natural boundary condition has to be defined associated with the particular process, and also need the initial condition, means if we are solving some tangent problem, then some initial condition has to be defined. Now, what we can look into the constitutive relation between the different two physical quantities, and actually the constitutive equation when it relates between the two physical quantities. For example, stress and strain relation, we relate between stress and strain, that different from using the constitutive relation, but it may not follow directly follow the physical laws. Apart from that, it can be combined with the other equations such as equilibrium and kinematical equations. So, that constitutive equation can be combined with the equilibrium and kinematical equations. We will show that what we can formulate the stress analysis model in associated with the welding process, and there we will be able to explain that how the constitutive equation are basically linked with the equilibrium and kinematical equations to solve some kind of the to represent the physical laws associated with the particular process. Now, constitutive law parameters, it can be derived from the experimental observation, that is possible to do, and this normally called the phenomenological modeling. So, experimental observation, what we can do these things, the methodology is to explicitly include the variables from the physics as the internal state variables. For example, suppose we want to discuss the recrystallization model, recrystallization phenomena we want to explain that happens in the particular grain scale or mesoscale modeling approach. So, in this case, that we can take the what way dislocation density evolves in this particular as a function of temperature, strain rate, or only the deformation, only the strain. So, this here we can incorporate the grain size evolving with respect to the in the recrystallization mechanism as the internal state variables, or this density can be represented as the dislocation density can be represented as a state of internal that is called the internal state variables, and how it evolves we can track on these things, and this entirely depends on the phenomenological behavior normally happening in the recrystallization process. So, it means that phenomenological modeling can be done, and we can look into the constitutive laws which can be represents as a function of some internal state variables, and certain parameters we can measure experimentally, that is also possible by doing some experiment. We can give this way, or this is the one way. Other way, possibility of the format of the constitutive equation. For example, we assume some particular in material science, in particular process we use the Arrhenius type of equation that link the stress, strain rate, temperature, and particular maybe some internal state variables. We try to evaluate these things, but in this case when you represent particular process using this equation, Arrhenius type of equation, but it is associated with some amount the constant term. So, to evaluate this constant term, it is necessary to do some kind of the experimental, and that particular scale, maybe grain scale, we need to do some kind of the experiment so that we can define these parameters. So, this is another approach, and here with giving some example also. Constitutive equation based on the knowledge about the physical mechanism, for example, causing the deformation in case of fracture, failure mechanism, how the material fails in the particular with the application of the mechanical load, that in these cases if we look into the physical mechanism and we can look back some constitutive relation, the material behavior we can represent some internal state variable. So, we can predict the failure mechanism using some this kind of modeling approaches, phenomenological modeling approaches. Now, apart from this, an alternate to phenomenological modeling is to derive the constitutive equations. We can derive the constitutive equation, but which information from the low scale. We can get the information from the low scale, or we analyzing the what is happening at the lower scale, taking the information from that, then we can develop some kind of the constitutive model. That is another route also. But at the low scale they are following some kind of the physics particular, but therefore some physical law it is following in that particular, and then that physical law has to be understood very carefully if you want to develop some kind of the lower scale model, and taking the information from the low scale to develop some constitutive model in the next scale, net upper scale model. Here you can give some example. Parameters for the grain scale models can be used for the microstructural evaluation. So, this can be one example of that using the lower scale information to develop or to derive some kind of the constitutive models by understanding the physical mechanism involved is a particular low scale approach. Now, we can give one example also. For example, determine the material property Young's modulus. We know that Young's modulus, we can from the experiment we can easily determine the Young's modulus. Simply we can do that simple tensile testing for a particular sample, and that parameter or that value Young's modulus is maybe significant to develop some kind of the mathematical model, and that mathematical model is basically represents the material response. So, to do that we have some knowledge with some data associated with the Young's model for this particular. It means that some particular parameters, some particular properties has to be fed to the model such that it will be able to predict the similar kind of the behavior. So, that means we cannot exclude the experimental procedure completely once when we try to develop some kind of the mathematical model. We need some information from the experimental analysis as well. Specifically from the experimental analysis, what kind of material properties we measure, that can be input to the numerical model. Now, micromechanics model take into account more detail about the material structure at the grain scale. Definitely what we can measure in the macro scale, universal tensile testing we can define different parameters, but that may not be able to explain what is happening at the micro scale. So, therefore, if we able to track what the micromechanical behavior at the micro scale, the behavior of the grain, they are interacting, how they are growing, is there a nucleation or all these phenomena, grain scale structure, if we analyze all these phenomena and then making the average properties, all these things, that is the representation of the material response at the next scale, maybe in the continuum scale. So, therefore, the properties at the micro scale is basically averaged and passed to the continuum model is through homogenization theory. So, that means micro scale model we analyze all these things, then information passed in the average properties values is passed to the next scale modeling approach. So, in that way there is a development of the different multi-scale model is there, and it means that it is necessary to analyze what is happening each and every scale. We will try to look how there is a development of the micro scale and what are the different approaches, also try to look into that. Now, micromechanical model can also provide some local variation particular which may not be able to capture this variation in the local variation of the properties at the next scale, maybe continuum scale, to look into this variation. So, therefore, is a simpler continuum model is also possible to develop simply by taking it what is the information happening in the micro scale, and we simply averaging this phenomena at the micro scale and all properties values, and this gives the input to the continuum model to develop the or to get the output from this particular model. That is why multi-scale model at the different length and time scale can be divided in broadly in these 4 categories. The 4th length scale in the multi-scale materials modeling, here you can see that starting from the electronic structure. Electronic structure basically exists in this thing at the very lower scale in maybe nanometer or less than nanometer scale. There look into the electronic structure of a particular material, then will be predict something by looking into the electronic structure, but we cannot directly predict the link between the continuum model from the electronic structure. Now, if we analyze the scale, what is happening in the next scale, then atomistic scale maybe it is on the range of 10 nanometer in that scale, that is molecular dynamic simulation. If you do the molecular dynamic simulation, we take the information from the electronic structure, then we predict some behavior, but that prediction of the behavior is basically valid at this particular scale in the molecular dynamic scale, in that nanometer scale basically. Now, if we understand the microstructure model, if you using some, for example, finite element method, we can take the input from the molecular dynamics, taking the input for the microstructure model, then it is possible to predict more precisely the microstructure in a for a particular material. And then if you see the microstructure analysis of this model can be developed in the higher scale, maybe we can say the in the range of the micrometer scale. Then continuum scale, that you can use the CFD method also, or maybe finite element method can also be used in the continuum scale, can be applied, but is the analysis properties is basically the resolution of the properties in the continuum scale means is the millimeter scale, maybe millimeter scale we are doing all this analysis. That means the resolution of this modeling approach at the continuum scale able to predict what is happening at the millimeter scale. But if we analyze the continuum scale or we develop some model on the continuum scale, it will not be able to predict what is happening in the electronic structure, that means at the atomistic scale, that is not possible to predict what is happening at the lower scale. Now this multi-scale modeling approach is possible to develop, but our model most of the cases we normally we analyze, our focus is not the lower scale model, but our focus is what is happening in the continuum scale model using the finite element method. That means what is happening at the millimeter scale, all these things, because most of the material properties we normally measure at the millimeter scale. For example, Young's modulus, what is the yield point, this is nothing to do with the this is not able to predict, the properties is not associated with the microstructure, maybe micrometer scale, but this properties is very much associated with the millimeter scale. So that is why that properties we measure it, this is useful for the development of the model in the continuum scale or maybe in the millimeter scale model. So multi-scale modeling is the, there are several approaches are also there, but I am presenting here in such a way that we get some idea, that overall idea what are the different modeling approaches maybe we can follow to understand the processes and what particular processes, what is the necessary, what is the limitation of a particular process in the modeling approach, and what is the resolution of this particular model, or at what scale we can analyze all these phenomena. Now what is the importance of the multi-scale methods? Multi-scale method is simply what we can link at the different scale, that is the multi-scale method, but there is a limitation of industrial simulations today. First is the continuum models are good, but not always adequate, because problems in the fracture, basically by continuum scale we will not be able to understand what is the mechanism of the fracture or failure for a particular material, obsoletes. And in these cases, most of the cases we can use some kind of the constitutive relation models to describe the material behavior, then we will be able to explain this thing in the continuum scale. But when you analyze the material behavior, the constitutive models to describe the material behavior, then we have to going back to the next scale level modeling approach. For example, to understand the what is happening the microstructure level, then we will be able to predict the fracture and failure mechanism using the analysis only on the continuum scale. Similarly, macroscopic material properties of the new materials and the composites are not readily available. We necessary for a particular new materials we want to analyze, we want to develop the model, then we should know what are the material properties of this particular material at this particular scale also, and then it is possible to develop some kind of the simulation. And next, detailed atomistic information is required in regions of the high deformation or discontinuity. So therefore, if we want to predict using the continuum models, high particular zone on the deformation zone or discontinuity or deformation happens, very localized deformation, anything we want to predict all these things, it is always have to link with the previous scale modeling approach. See, it may be atomistic scale, it may be microstructure scale, all this information is may be required, so that we can develop the continuum models in the more precisely. So that information is required. But question is that what we can interface the one scale to another scale model, because time scale all these things are different and the analysis are different, the analysis, physical law, physical behavior are different at two different scale. So the main challenge is the linking of the different scale to develop a multi-scale model. Another example, we can take the molecular dynamic simulation. For example, that is the one continuum scale, this is the higher scale, maybe millimeter scale, and one is the molecular dynamic simulation in the nanometer scale. In this case, what we do, limited to very small domain has to be covered, we normally consider only 10 to the power 6 to 10 to the power 8 atoms, and small time frames, only the nanosecond level. That kind of analysis can be done in the molecular dynamic simulation. But at the same time, if you want to do even molecular dynamic simulation, and it is also requires some kind of the experimental data to do the simulation, and but all this experiment has to be done in the nanoscale also, because we are analyzing, we are developing this model at the nanoscale level. So, therefore, properties should be defined at the nanoscale. So, definitely obviously the main difficulty is the all to the develop or to do some kind of the experiments at the nanoscale is very much expensive. So, that is why in that sense it takes much larger time, long time, costly experimental setups are required to get all these properties in the molecular dynamic simulation. So, that is why these are the different challenges normally we face in case of the at the lower scale modeling approach. Now, is just definition which can the hierarchical approach and concurrent approaches. The hierarchical approach use the known information at one scale and to generate the model for the larger scale. Basically, we get the information at a lower scale and the supply this information to the larger scale to develop that model. Information passing through the some sort of averaging process, already explained. When you try to link two different scale, the lower scale we simply making the properties in the average, and then we feed to the properties to the next scale to get the good simulation for these things. Example, bonding models, potential, some kind of the constitutive models, microstructure constitutive models we develop, and that model we feed to the continuum scale, we use this thing. So, that in the continuum scale we will be able to get a good very good model development. Similarly, concurrent approach means in these cases perform simulation and different length scales simultaneously, but in these cases the relationship between these two scales are dynamic, mostly two different length scales are very much dynamic in nature. So, basically in that sense it creates some kind of the difficulty, because it is a relationship completely dynamic in that approaches. Continuum methods, therefore, this method is assumed that the matter is continuous, and this treat the properties of the system as a field quantities, numerically solve the balance equations coupled with the phenomenological equations to predict the properties of a particular system. So, when you try to get the properties, then we have to follow some kind of the phenomenological equations, and that from that equation we evaluate the properties and we can feed to the continuum models, and this is the already discussed, this is the milliscale model. Now, advantage disadvantage is that, for example, in principle handle the system of the macroscopic size. So, everything is defined in the macroscopic scale, and of course, dynamic processes can be solved using these continuum methods, but it takes relatively longer time. So, dynamic problems can also be solved in this case, but difficulties is that require input, for example, elastic tensor different coefficients, diffusion coefficients, equations of the state, all this kind can be the input to these things, and most of the cases with the coefficients value, elastic components, maybe this most of the properties can be evaluated experimentally, that data is required either experimentally or some point of time it may be required to the data from the lower scale method. That means microscopic scale method we can follow in that micro scale model, from there some data is required for these things, which sometimes is very difficult and it may be required extensive experiments or simulation is also required. So, that is the main difficulties in these continuum methods. Apart from that, it cannot explain the results that depend on the electronic or molecular level of the details. So, certain structure, all these things that depend on the molecular or electronic level, then that particular that it is the continuum methods cannot explain that kind of in detail or material behavior of this particular material, which depends on the entirely dependent on the lower scale detail. Connections between the scales, it can be that upscaling and downscaling. So, two different scale, there are two approaches in the connection to different scale. One is the using the results from the lower scale calculation to obtain the parameters for the higher scale model method, and this is called the upscaling these things, and this is relatively easy to do, and it is also called the deductive approach. For example, calculation of the phenomenological coefficients, for example, elastic, viscosities, diffusivities, and from atomistic simulation for the latter using the continuum model. For example, this is a deductive approach for that means the simply we are evaluate the properties from the lower scale simulation, atomistic simulation, and then that data we are feeding to the upscaling, that means higher scaling and the continuum scaling method or continuum scaling model. So, this is called the upscaling. So, simply that upscaling means using the data, taking the data from lower scaling to develop the model in the upper scale. Similarly, downscaling, using the higher scale information to build the parameters for the lower scale method, and of course, this is more difficult due to the non-uniqueness of the problem, and we can give some example also, but it is a few cases, that means for example, results from the mesoscale simulation. Definitely mesoscale simulation or grand scale simulation do not having the atomistic details, therefore, it would be desirable to be able to use such results to rerun the atomistic simulation. Some information in some point of view, it is possible to get the what is the information in the mesoscale simulation. Some parameter is sometimes useful to develop the model or information from this mesoscale pass to the atomistic scale, and then that atomistic scale method can be useful, but it is not a very precision or good approach to follow all these things, and this is also called the inductive approach. We can give an example also. For example, stress strain curve for a randomly oriented polycrystal. We can know that stress strain curve for a randomly oriented polycrystal is easily to define if we define this oriented polycrystals, but this information stress strain can be used to predict the shear stress and shear strain curve for a single crystal structure. It is basically higher scale to the information passage from the higher scale to lower scale approach. That means it is one example of the downscaling approach, or we can say the inductive approach. Here you see that they are having some relation between these two, shear stress and shear strain, in the term of the Taylor factor, and here the normal stress and the shear stress can be used using the Taylor factor. So, that means using this higher scale, that means data at the higher scale is a stress strain curve, random to relative precision. This is probably is possible to fetch to the lower scale, so that you will be able to predict the single crystal, because experiment for the single crystal structure and evaluation of this stress strain diagram of single crystal structure is more difficult. Rather, I say that polycrystalline material, the evaluation of the stress strain diagram is little bit easier. So, in that sense, this is the one of the example for the inductive approaches. Now, what are the challenges in the multi-scale modeling? In general, we can say the large number of degrees of freedom at the atomic scale. So, it is more computational time is involved, more computer basically is involved in this case. Then interfaces, what we can represent the interface, that is also another challenging task. So, there may be possibility of mismatch of the dynamic properties and other issues because of the improper defining of the interfaces. And of course, it is very difficult to averaging sometimes, because there are multiple time scales are involved in this multi-scale modeling approaches. Interdisciplinary nature of the multi-scale method, for example, continuum mechanics is involved, at the same time classical particle dynamics, lattice mechanisms may also involve, quantum mechanisms and quantum chemistry also involve, thermodynamics, statistical physics. So, linking all this one scale to another scale is basically difficult. At the same time, the handling of all this kind of the different scale as a single platform is very difficult to handle basically. For example, atomic scale plasticity, lattice dislocations may be different mechanism, physical law follow as compared to the what you know the continuum plasticity, von Mises ill criteria and the plasticity model in the continuum scale can be different or should be different from the atomic scale plasticity. Then what we can link all these things, that is one of the main question mark I can say associated with the linking of these different scales. Now, some little bit on this statistical, because we have discussed the different physical based modeling approaches, and this physics may be involved at the different scales also, and what we can link all these scales, that is the physics based modeling approach that was. Now, what is the statistical and data driven modeling approach? This is a different aspect to make you understand that how the different modeling approach, which is different from the any kind of the physics based modeling approach. So, statistical and data driven modeling approaches, maybe the most important part is the what we can collect the data from the sensor. Maybe from the through experiments we can collect the data, and then we analyze the data such that we can link the input data to the output data, but it may not follow any kind of the physical law involved. It is simply that there is a handling of all the several data by means of some kind of the statistical relationships between the input and output. That is the overview of a statistical and data driven modeling approach. Now, sensor, to provide the data, any kind of sensor can be used through the data acquisition system. Then it can be in the form of a current, voltage, or directly temperature. Maybe I am talking about in perspective of the welding process. So, sensor data can be used for online monitoring as well also, but it may be collected the data, and then for online monitoring it passes through the robotic system, so that we can monitor the system on the online monitoring system. So, that way you can use, or other way we can offline we can analyze all this sensor data, but there is a necessary to collect the data through the data acquisition system and then storing of this data. One example of the sensor acquisition data is that, for example, measuring of the temperature. Now, we can use the thermocouple or non-contact mode, for example, thermal vision camera or maybe infrared camera method, both can be used to collect the data. But infrared camera, uneven surface, thermal emission becomes an issue. So, that is the one difficulty of infrared thermometer, but however, we can use the data. Infrared thermometers is more reliable as compared to the thermocouple, because infrared the thermometers having the faster response as compared to the thermocouple. So, once we try to decide the online monitoring of the system, then it is better to acquire the data from the infrared camera as compared to the thermocouple data. So, that is the difference of the collecting the data and what kind of the sensor we can use for a particular process. Now, once data acquisition, so sensor data is collected, some sample rate basically data, and we can store in the buffer or temporary memory, and it depends on the what we can sample rate, and transfer of the data is controlled by the CPU or the microprocessor. That means rate per unit time how many data can be collected, that is decided by the CPU or microprocessor. It depends on that, but my point is that it is a one important parameter to consider for a particular when you try to use some kind of the sensor to collect the data. Now, once the discrete data points has been collected, evaluated through the different property evaluation techniques, that now the next step is that what we can evaluate all this data. That means what we can analyze the data to develop some kind of the mathematical model that does not deal with the some kind of the physical laws in this process. For example, the strength properties of the weld joint or hardness and the surface roughness of a machine surface can be linked input parameter, because we are interested what is the weld joint properties. So, we can conduct the experiments at the several input process parameters, several experiments, and we can experimentally evaluate what are the joint properties. Now, we have this data. Now, we just correlate between what is the input and what is the joint properties, like that. Same thing may happen also machining process, also surface hardness and surface roughness of the machine surface with respect to the input parameter. But how to link between the input and output parameter, there are several techniques. We can look into that. One example, that is called the process modeling and the optimization. We take one example pertinent to the welding process. What are the few approaches? So, sensor integration method, that means it is a collection of the data and analysis of the data method. We can use any artificial intelligence techniques also. We can use several database techniques, that means some statistical methods we can use it. We can use the vision system based method, that means we can collect the data based on the vision, that means we can capture the image as a data, and then we analyze the data to find some kind of the correlation. Now, for example, the modeling of the oil quality using the main spindle motor current signal. So, we can in a friction stir welding process, we can model the weld quality. That means we can evaluate the weld quality, but during the process we collect the data from the motor current signal. Similarly, we can collect the data machine vision based system, we can put the camera and from the we can collect the data. If there are any defect or all these things, we can use this data image, and we can analyze the image also in the form of a data. And modeling of the weld quality using the sensor integration techniques, different sensor data. For forces, for example, we can use the force data also, the force signal in the we collect the data and store the data, and at the same time torque, the data from the measurement of the torque in FSW process. So, this is nothing but the different ways the putting different sensor, we can collect the data, and then we can analyze by using the different methods to get the relation between input and output. That means few research techniques, for example, wavelet packet analysis can be done of all these data, collected data. Hilbert-Huang transformation with the wavelet analysis can be done. We can apply the fractal theory also. We can use artificial neural network, we can use support vector machine. So, these are the different techniques we can use to analyze the data to reach some kind of the input and output relationship. Now, it will be more easier to understand that what we can do the process modeling and optimization, these things. We can take an example of the MAG metal active gas welding process, and here what we can establish between the input and output relationship. We can simply the regression analysis, which is collect the data and as per Taguchi design of the experiment, and then we can do the but regression analysis, then we have to look in the ANOVA table, also ANOVA method, to get all these data, statistical data here. Now, this regression analysis model was basically embedded in the optimization algorithm, and then to determine the optimal process parameters. So, we can link some optimization algorithm also to determine the optimal process parameters. In these cases, for weld bed geometry specification. In these cases, suppose we can get the input parameter for MAG welding process, and we can link the with the what is the weld bed geometry specification, and which geometry to achieve particular geometry, what should be the input parameters, that can be done using some kind of the optimization algorithm process. Now, input parameters can be in a MAG welding process, and for example, welding speed, welding voltage, wire feed rate, nozzle to plate distance, torch angle, this can be done, and the output parameters are the different responses, for example, height, bead width, bead penetration, these are the output parameters. And of course, we can design the experiment also. If we follow the full factorial design, then huge experimental data. If we follow the Taguchi design of experiment, then you can define the limited experiments in this case. Now, if you use some kind of the combination of optimization technique, for example, genetic algorithm, differential evolution, simulated annealing, in these cases we can choose any kind of the method, and then set of mathematical equations can be done, for example, linear, curvilinear or logarithm equations we can give the input. We do not know which equation is better fit to fit the data. Then therefore, development of the model relationship between the process variables and the weld geometries can be done in the particular welding process. Now, optimization algorithm determine the optimum values for the process parameters with respect to any given bed geometry. For any given bed geometry, this is the input, and using the relationship between input and output, some statistical relation, then optimization will predict the what is the best input parameters if you want to achieve particular bed geometry. So, that is the purpose of this optimization in this particular process. Now, Taguchi DOE is basically adequate for the models and variance within the confidence less than 95%, and correlation factor for these models is normally we get all the data from the ANOVA table, and then choose the superior model among all these parameters and all these relationship. For example, we can use the linear, curvilinear, logarithm, and based on that we can choose which relationship is better fitting between the input and output data. Therefore, few experiments are used to test the mathematical model to get these things. Now, mathematical model provide one-to-one relationship between the process variables and the weld dimension, and it can be seen in the two different ways. One is the predicting bed dimension based on the given welding variables. Suppose this is the welding variables, I can give the predict the what is the bed dimension. In other way also, using this relation between the input and output variables, if I want to predict that achieve particular bit dimension, what should be the input parameters. That information can also be get from this data driven this modeling approach. So, maybe this modeling approach is easy to only analyzing the data all these things, but it does not follow these things. So, therefore, if there is any physical law is involving this local variation or particular governed by process, particular there is change of these things, drastic change of the parameters governing the physical law, then that kind of phenomena is basically not possible to able to achieve or to capture using this data driven modeling approach. Now, in summary, for the module first lecture of this module 1, we can say that we have discussed the properties of the engineering materials. Then we discussed the multi-scale modeling approach, the different hierarchical approach, maybe lower scale to higher scale is the most preferable approach, because we use the information lower scale to develop the higher scale model. It will be easier for these things, and of course, multi-scale modeling approach, each and every scale, when you try to look into the particular scale, it is also necessary to do some experimental data is required at this particular scale. So, that is why it is maybe a challenging task in the sense that to link between the two different scales is the most challenging task in case of the multi-scale modeling approach, apart from this computational time for a particular multi-scale model. Also, we have discussed the physics based modeling approaches, what are the physics modeling approaches, and definitely we understand that physics based modeling approach, we have to understand the what are the physical mechanism involved in this particular process, then it will be easier to develop this particular physics based model in pertaining to any kind of the manufacturing process. And finally, we discuss the data driven modeling approach, and I hope the difference between the data driven modeling approach and physics based modeling approaches, there is a difference is there, and having some limitation of data driven modeling approaches also with respect to the physics based modeling approach. So, that is why our whole part or analysis of this particular course will be following the physics based modeling approach, not the data driven modeling approach. So, thank you very much for your kind attention.